happened to me yesterday? I was going back to my apartment when I got off work, and I opened up the door because how my apartment is, you open the door, and there's kind of like a corridor, like a hallway, and there's a bunch of apartments in that room. But I opened up the door, and right at my feet, inside the apartment, not my apartment, but inside like the doors where it leads to all the apartments.
It was a rat.
No, it was a snake, about 2 to 2.5 foot long snake. It just jumped because I scared it, and scaring a snake means it's gonna strike. I mean, I didn't get bit or anything, but I kind of, because I live on the second floor. There's steps you go up, and the person right next where the snake was, I just told him, I'm like, hey, there's a snake right here. You might want to deal with that, or it's gonna get in your apartment. And I kind of just went up to my apartment.
Was it poisonous?
I don't know what kind of snake it was. We have a little pond behind us, so I think it was like a water snake. So
Dang,
it could have been poisonous.
Those are usually poisonous.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thanks for joining us on this episode. This is going to be a little bit different episode. This is going to be a two-parter. A two-parter.
Part.
So, we are going to do an interview with the special guest. You know who our special guest is? The special guest is us. We're going to be interviewing each other.
You just said a very Rhett and Link thing.
Did I really?
Yeah. Your biscuits.
Well, I didn't mean to. I got this actually idea from a different podcast, not Rhett and Link.
Okay.
But we're going to do a little interview type style 2-part episode. I'm going to interview Joseph on this episode, and then next week he's going to interview me. So that way you can we can get into the nitty-gritty.
Nitty-gritty. You haven't thought about the questions you're asking me enough. I'm going to think so hard about the questions. You're not gonna want to answer any of them.
No, I do have some deep questions.
Okay.
Some decently deep questions.
Okay.
First, I know you didn't like this, but this was a significant project in your upbringing with filmmaking. You know what project I'm about to talk about?
Yeah, but ask it and explain it. Ask it and explain it so I know what you're asking.
Okay. Well, between like this and schooling, just your thought process. I know you were wanting to get into filmmaking before you went to school. That's why you decided to go to school where you did.
Yeah.
But between this, at least to me, it seemed like that was a really big, influential kind of thing that got you on the mindset of just creating a company and filmmaking in general. What was that process about, like going through school, or the project that I'm talking about is Faith Song, where you were the DP on a Christian film, which was I never watched it, but I was told it was very poorly made and it was a bad experience all around. But it was kind of an influential part, wasn't you? Met a couple people that were a big part in just
other films I worked on.
Yeah, other films and school. We haven't talked a lot your perspective with the school aspect of
what
things.
What school? Are you talking about York Tech?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, or even other, because you've done some smaller type school type class things.
Yeah, I mean, I did a course, and I went to Charleston for a weekend.
How did that help you in filmmaking, or just your mindset? Did you meet anybody that was a huge part in your life in starting films?
Okay, so there's a lot of things that I think about when you're asking these questions. First, I'll try to keep it brief, but
go dive into it.
I know you probably have more questions than this, but when it came to school, when I was in high school, I was like, I don't know. I was actually thinking about going to Pensacola Christian College. I think that's what it's called. but in Florida. And I actually, the Christian film Courageous and Fireproof, there was the Kendrick brothers.
Yeah, which I don't want to interrupt you that much, but I have a thought on that.
Okay.
Did you know their latest film was made, they took a lot of people from Bob Jones school and made their latest film, which I have not seen, the racing one.
Well, I didn't see it either, but I asked a couple people, but the biggest one that kind of solidified it in my mind was not the one that's in the movies, Alex, but his brother. I believe his name is Steve or Steven.
Yeah, Steven boy.
I think he's the older brother.
Yeah,
I don't know. He's played.
They're both decently old.
They're old dudes. Well, there was a conference for homeschoolers and stuff in the area that we lived in, and he was there speaking at it. And then he had people coming in, and I think it was actually I think it was actually a line where you can come through and get pictures taken with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose to wait in line because I wanted to ask him a question.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking
it's interesting. I don't remember this.
I was taking very seriously this idea of like, what should I do? Should I go to school for filmmaking? Because I had already asked other people. I had already gone to that course, I think.
Yeah.
I went to Indianapolis for a week to do a video course at a school. I think it was called Verity Institute. They had like a week course on filmmaking, and I learned a few basics. That was when I was still in high school. And then I went to this thing, and I was like, from what I've talked with people, they're like, I don't know if school is that important. I don't know if school is necessarily the best avenue for people who want to get into filmmaking. It's more, especially indie filmmaking and people that are going to create their own way. You should just do stuff and learn while you do and create a portfolio, meet people, go about it that way.
Yeah.
And so I was waiting in line to get a picture with him, but I didn't care about the picture. I wanted to ask this guy a question who's made...
Did you ever get a picture?
Not with him.
Okay.
I wanted to ask this guy who's made, in the Christian world, and even in general, the Courageous and Fireproof, those are pretty big films.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this guy who directed those, him and his brother, should I go to school for filmmaking?
Mm-hmm. What was his answer?
He said no.
Okay. Is that all? He didn't go into it?
He said, I didn't do filmmaking, and granted, I've gotten into filmmaking as an interest, not at first a career, because he was a pastor at a church.
Mm-hmm.
But he said there's as long as you're persistent and you don't expect people to create ways for you, but you want to be successful and create your own way, you don't need to go to school.
Yeah.
And I struggled a bit with that idea of I need to have something, I need my resume to look like I had some kind of education except for high school. So I took that advice and I didn't go to Pensacola. I said, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do something cheaper, more affordable, so I'm not in debt, and I'm going to do it because people that have seen success in this field have instructed me otherwise. So I went to a community college in the next town over from where we grew, well, in South Carolina where our parents lived. And I went there for a year and did a course called Teleproductions, which was like basics of media. I learned a few new things. I already had learned a few things they were teaching. But it was a whole year. I went to school for a year. I graduated from that program, and I got a certificate of employment pretty much. It wasn't a associate's degree. It wasn't a bachelor's. It's pretty much a certificate of employment. And usually it was kind of focused on broadcasting style work, which is odd because although I never thought I'd get into broadcasting, it's currently my day job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though I don't like broadcasting, I found myself in a job that is broadcasting, but it has a weird twist to it, to where it's not really broadcasting. It's more like a daily show, and there's broadcasting in addition to,
which is kind of odd. Not to interview myself, but I just want to throw a little 2 cents in there. I remember once you got out of school, you got an internship at this TV station, and you were like, I'm not going for a job there because that's not what I want. You did other things. You actually went to a camp after that.
Mm-hmm. That was actually because this Christian camp called the Wilds. I actually loved it there, and I loved the atmosphere. I loved the craziness. I loved the big Christian camp mentality, and so I was like, I want to work here, and I specifically want to do the video production work for this camp, and it was like my high school dream.
Yeah, it was, because I remember we just thought it was so interesting, the film.
Yeah, I mean, we were into video when we were younger, and so we saw them. We would buy like these highlight videos at the end of the week of our specific week, so we might be in the video, you know, or people we know. And there's like 300 to 400 kids there each week for like 10 weeks. You know what I mean? So they're producing a lot of video media, not just that, but also for live skits and, you know, promotional stuff before services and things of that nature. So I just was like, I want to have that job. I would look around and I would see the guy who's walking around with a camera and not doing photography, but I can tell he's videoing. And I'd be like, I want that job. Specifically, I want that job.
Mm-hmm. What was there going there? Was there anybody? I know you butted heads with a few people when you were there, a little bit, but was there anybody that maybe not in filmmaking, but just in general, that was your kind of the point where you kind of left? You didn't live at home anymore, so that was a weird time, wasn't it?
Which point are you talking about? Are you talking about after the Wilds? Or
the
before?
Wilds.
So when I left the Wilds?
Yeah. Well, I guess you came back after the Wilds, but you still left.
I left that job. Oh, well, first I think we need to say I got the job when I finished school. I had a connection with someone who was relatively high up working at the Wilds. I had a connection. He knew I did video. He knew I just studied to do video. I applied. They needed a guy, and so I got the job.
Did you apply? Or was he like, hey, this
pretty much what happened is the summer when I was finishing up school, he called me and said, hey, we're looking for a videographer over the summer. And I was like, I'm finishing up school. I don't think I can be there. I don't want to quit school to do that. I said, please call me back in the fall.
Yeah.
And I actually emailed him when the fall came and said, I just finished school. Do you guys have a videographer position open for the year into next summer?
Which is interesting because when you went to that week-long program that you were talking about earlier for schooling, or it wasn't schooling, but like just classes, you stayed with him.
Yeah. So this guy, his name's Joe Fant. He was the son of the senior pastor at my family's church.
Yeah.
He had been our Sunday school teacher.
So he's kind of,
he
not
knew me
purposely, but kind of,
he put
a little bit.
He invested in me a good bit. He without me even realizing it at the time, he invested in me for sure.
Yeah.
But he lived in Indianapolis. He got a job at a church in Indianapolis, Indiana. Working as the youth pastor at a relatively large conservative Baptist church there. So I went to that week-long program in Indianapolis. He lived about 30 minutes from where I was staying. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna stay at the school for like 4 days. Can I stay with you for one of the evenings to catch my flight on the way back home, you know? And he said yes. So he brought me from the school. He picked me up. He brought me to his house. I stayed with him, hung out with his family, went to his church, met people that he was teaching in the youth group. It was weird because I was in his youth group, his old youth group back in the day.
Man.
And then when I was working at the Wilds, people that were in that youth group that I met there, they started working at the Wilds because he was there. And so I remembered them. They remembered me, and we actually interacted and hung out quite a bit because we already knew each other. I had met there. So, but yeah, he was the one who called me about the initial job at the Wilds. He left that job to go work as the program director at the Wilds. and he was there for a few years. He's the one who called me and asked me about if I could do video. I said I couldn't. I'm finishing up the program. I emailed him in the fall, and he said, we haven't actually had a full-time, outside of summer, we haven't had a full-time videographer. And so let me talk to some people. So they came up with a decision and said, I think we have enough stuff going on that I think it would be beneficial for us to have a full-time videographer outside of just summer camp.
Yeah.
So I got hired in, like, I think I moved in September 1st or 2nd of 2014 or 2013. 2014.
Wait,
and I
to
stayed
this day,
until
they have a full-time
I stayed until the end of
videographer,
August.
don't they?
Yep.
Because they
this
eventually
day,
probably would have
yes.
got somebody.
But I was the first one. I was the one that was like, hey, between me and Joe Fant, we were kind of the ones that established the full-time videographer position. And I stayed until that whole year and then the summer after. And it was weird because I was fresh. I was young. I was like 18.
Yeah.
I was 18 when I finished that job because I signed on for a year contract, and then I decided not to sign up for another year. But it was weird. At 18 years old, I had already fulfilled, outside of the obscure vision of making films, I had already fulfilled like this tangible job dream at 18. And I was like, I've done it for a year. I've had the experience. And so it was a bit weird season, you know?
Yeah.
But going back to what you said earlier about, was there something that broke off? I butted heads with a few people. Not my direct boss. Steve, he was great.
Mr. Steve.
Steve Stadola. Joe Fant was great. Willie, all these people, they were great. There was a few individuals that ended up did leave while I was there. The audio guy, I butt-headed a few times with him over issues I'm not going to talk about here. But it was just, there was a few things that took place. I started dating Mackenzie, who's now my wife, while I was there. And so I decided I didn't want to have a long-distance relationship. And although people around me were saying, like, you just started dating this girl, why are you so serious? Most relationships don't work out anyway. I'm like, I feel like this one might be important. So I moved forward with it. I moved back to the area my parents lived and didn't sign for another year, even though they asked me to. And I came back to spend time with Mackenzie and to see where life went after that.
Well, that took up a chunk of our time, but another question I had, from your perspective.
You asked me about Faith's song. Are we going to be able to have enough time to talk about that?
Do you want to talk about it, or do you just want to skip it?
I can. You've already teased it.
Okay. But I have an ending question that might take a few minutes for you to answer too. But we're still under 20 minutes, so we're good. So
Okay.
talk about Faith's song for a few minutes.
Okay. I'll summarize it. Pretty much when I got back to the area after the Wilds, Mackenzie was graduating. She was looking for college. She decided to go to a college in Columbia, South Carolina, which is where I met a bunch of people. But I decided I was going to move there with her. I was going to get an apartment. She's going to live on campus. I didn't want to do the long distance relationship. I was only there in that town where our parents lived after the Wilds for about 9 months. I had a job at Walgreens.
Hold on. you moved to a different place because your girlfriend at the time, not fiance, not anything, just your girlfriend at the time, started going to school there.
Yes.
I think there's a word for that these days.
What?
A simp.
Well, it was a choice I decided to do.
Yeah, a lot of people choose to be simps.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
I'm glad I did it. But yeah, I moved
to
Columbia. Right before I moved to Columbia, I got reached out to by this guy named, probably shouldn't say his name. I might bleep it.
Okay.
His
name
guy,
is not that.
This guy had wrote a This guy had wrote a script, and he was going to direct it. I didn't know what level. He told me he had done video production before.
Do you think he was one of those guys that's like, yes, I have all this experience, he puts it on your resume, but really you haven't done anything?
Yes.
Okay.
He for sure was that. He was a manager at some kind of welding technician company, and so he had some knowledge of understanding equipment, but outside of that, he had no tangible knowledge or skill in the whole video or filmmaking world. Absolutely none. He was an older guy, probably mid to late 40s. And he had this Christian film, and I was like, if it's anything like Fireproof or Courageous, I'd be okay to have my name on that, He was going to pay me some money. He needed a director of photography. He found my name on the South Carolina Film Commission, which I signed up for a few months prior, and he reached out to me. And so I said, yes, I'm actually about to move to Columbia. That's where he lived and where the production was happening. I was like, what a coincidence. And so I got there, and I got a day job, and then I was working on that film Friday nights and all day Saturday, for 5 months or something like that, maybe 4 months. I don't know how long. And it was a rough experience. I mean, it was a full feature film that did get completed. It did get done. But it was way over budget. There was a lot of financial issues between investors and him taking out loans and stuff of that nature to try to get it complete. Most of the people, besides me and maybe 2 or 3 other people, weren't getting paid. There was a lot of people working, and they're all just work and volunteer. It wasn't a good environment. It wasn't relaxed. It wasn't creative. And I learned a lot of stuff about how not to be.
But it was also your first full-length feature film, too.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. And you met some people that
I met some really awesome people.
Path to Crimson.
Yes.
With
Ethan, Julia, Dustin.
She even helped us with
some of the actors that were
Dying of the Leaves.
Dying of the Leaves. Well, not in Dying of the Leaves, but some of the actors that were in Path to Crimson. They're friends that I met through Path to Crimson, who I met through Faith Song.
Yeah.
Just by connections, I got to, like Paul. He was a connection, a friend of George, who was also in Faith Song, who played the villain in Path to Crimson.
Yeah.
And so I just made connections, and it worked out to be able to find some good actors who are wanting to do creative things, and they didn't care about money. And I don't know if I would ask anyone from that experience to be like in a big feature-length film if it was all volunteer, or if I don't think I could do it in a timely fashion. You know what I mean? And so I met a lot of people, which was awesome. But not Path to Crimson, Faith Song, it wasn't a good experience for most of the people that was there. And sadly, I mean, I don't want to be super critical, but the film just in the end wasn't good. It was really poorly made, and a big part of that is because you try to. This is a big thing I have with the Christian film world. It's a bunch of people that have a passion to tell a story, but they don't know how to tell a story. They don't understand anything, and it's really ignorant to think that you can just pick up a camera and make a film or make a movie and to make it good. That's why people who are actually good at filmmaking do short films for years, because they're not. They want to make sure they're learning stuff before they decide to tackle a feature film. I can't say I'm perfectly, in correct step of not making longer films without the correct education. But I will say Faith Song wasn't anywhere close to what is considered even a decent film. It was cheesy, it was poorly filmed, everything. It was all rough. And it just wasn't a good experience, but I learned a lot.
Okay. So I have one final question. This is a doozy.
Okay.
A little stumper. Pumper. we have this business, WiseWorks, right?
Yes.
We're trying to make a little something off of it. But the only people that are really involved with WiseWorks, I mean, there's people who have volunteered their time, other people that are coming on kind of now with the Go Forward and Midnight Special and everything, but the primarily two people that are involved are us.
Mm-hmm.
We're brothers, right?
Yes.
From your perspective, give me a little brief synopsis of how you view our relationship with, business more, or brothers, or filming together. We, as filmmakers, business owners, as partners, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a little synopsis of what your...
Are you trying to get in my head?
No, I'm just... I just want to see how you view this dynamic.
Okay. Yeah. I'm grateful because I feel like if I have an issue, I can say it.
Yeah.
I have a bad tendency of being nice and not wanting to say rude things to people or things that they're not going to take well. Unless it's serious and honestly the person has pushed me too far. Which my threshold's pretty far, so don't test me, but I am very patient, I think. However, with you, I don't feel like I have to be as nice because we are brothers and I need to tell you what I think is important in the same way you do the same for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say don't start a business with someone else, be the sole owner. A lot of people have found success not doing that, you know. I honestly don't, I don't know about that aspect of it entirely. I think we're just doing it. We're going to see what happens and also make sure that me and you are on the same page about everything. And also try not to get butthurt. Try not to be too sensitive about things and just pursue what you want to do with your career. That's the main point of the company. So I've said this quite a few times. I just want my life to, in a big way, be about helping other people, as many as possible, be able to do what they want as far as a career goes and fulfill their dreams. And if I can help them do that, I want to. I think by doing that in the process, I will have seen my personal dreams and goals come to reality as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm choosing to invest in people, and because of that, I think other people will also invest in me, you know. That's kind of my perspective. That's kind of how I view you. In some ways, it's a little bit different because it's like, okay, we're brothers, and so we're starting this thing. So my dynamic with other people in the future is going to be different than my dynamic with you currently or in the future. So it's just kind of, I think it's going to work out well. I think it's a good move. It's not going to make things easier, but it might. I don't know. I feel like me and you are pretty good at fighting with each other. And so if we have one fight, which we won't, we'll have many, and we already have. But if we have one fight, it's not like a thing you have to be worried that they're going to screw you over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of like, oh, we've been fighting our whole life. We understand.
Yeah.
And it's not that, I mean, we're humans. You can't really expect to never get upset about something.
Okay. That was a good way to end it off.
Okay.
So,
do you feel satisfied with what I've talked about?
Yeah. Do you not feel like that was a good episode?
It was good.
Yeah.
I feel like I could say a lot more, but I'm curious what other questions you had, but I think this episode needs to be finished.
Okay. So thanks for joining us this episode. We also have, you're watching this on YouTube, I'm assuming, but you can also listen to the audio version on Spotify. And we also have an exclusive Spotify only episode on Friday night called the Midnight Special
at 10 p.m.
10 p.m. and
Eastern time.
it's a little bit longer than these podcasts. It's
somewhere between an hour 15, hour 30 usually. Up to this point, we've done about 8 episodes, and it's been about that. Yeah.
It's a little bit more relaxed. Go check that out. And then we will also be back next week with, I guess, my part of this episode. Joe's going to come up with a few questions he has.
Oh, they're going to be so much better than yours.
Okay.
You just had me tell a story. I'm going to ask you some hard ones.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this.
Ta-ta.